Good morning, dear learners, and once again, welcome to the MOOC on Economics of Gender and Development. And we are in week 9, and this is module number 31, and it's on gender and development indicators. So, gender and social development indicators are essential analytical tools used to measure a society's progress towards inclusivity, equity, and human rights. These metrics encompass diverse dimensions, including health outcomes, educational attainment, economic participation, and also political empowerment. Historically, the 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action served as a global catalyst, establishing a blueprint for women's empowerment that integrated these indicators into national policy dialogues. This commitment was further solidified through the Millennium Development Goals (MDGs) and the subsequent 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, particularly under Sustainable Development Goal 5, that is SDG 5, which targets the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and girls. The significance of these indicators lies in their deep interconnectedness. For instance, progress in female education is a primary lever for improving maternal health and reducing child mortality. While global data suggests significant strides in areas like primary school enrollment, progress in nutrition, and economic agency has often stagnated or even decreased. Already in the MOOC, we have come across varied dimensions of gender disparity. And in this module, we shall try to offer a comprehensive evaluation of a few important development indicators, contrasting global progress between developed and developing nations, while providing a granular analysis of the Indian scenario and its internal state-wise disparities. Now, with regard to the status of progress in health and education, we see that the last 25 years have witnessed a generational leap in female education and significant advancements in reproductive health. Yet, these gains are often offset by persistent morbidity and systemic exclusion. Since 1995, the number of girls enrolled in primary and secondary school globally has increased by 180 million, and female enrollment in tertiary education has tripled. And by 2018, the world achieved near parity in primary and secondary enrollment with 100 girls enrolled for every 100 boys. And studies indicate that globally, girls now outnumber boys in school enrollment and completion, yet significant gender gaps remain in sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. And in various countries, boys outperform girls in mathematics, one of the important subjects in school education at lower secondary levels, with notable disparities seen in Brazil, Chile, Italy, New Zealand, and the UK. And this we can see in figure 1. And from the last part of figure 1, it can be seen that in low and middle income countries like Cote d'Ivoire and the state of Palestine, girl students are performing better than boys in grade 8 mathematics subject. Again, in the first part, we also see the countries where girls are lagging behind. And in the second part, we see parity of girl and boy students in performance in the same parameter, that is in mathematics. So here is figure 1. Okay, here you see 3 parts. In the left part, boys are doing better than girls, which is generally a traditional thing we see. And in the middle part, we see the parity between boys and girls. And in the last part, we see the girls are doing better than boys. Further, it should be noted that in low-income nations, only 50 women aged 25 to 54 age groups engage in education and training for every 100 men. Studies indicate that women's leadership in education fosters gender equality and addresses challenges faced by girls, including gender-based violence and inadequate sanitation. Now, for example, research in Benin, Madagascar, Senegal, and Togo shows that women-led schools achieve better academic results akin to an additional year of schooling. However, women often represent a higher percentage of secondary school teachers than principals in 65 to 70 regions. And with the rise of generative AI, artificial intelligence, the digital divide leaves women and girls who are notably more offline at a greater disadvantageous situation. Now, with regard to global health trends and the morbidity gap, from the different studies we see that maternal health has seen substantial improvements, with the global maternal and mortality ratio (MMR) declining by roughly 40% between 2000 and 2023, and skilled birth attendance rose from 60.9% to 86.6% in the same period. But despite these gains, women face a unique morbidity burden. While women generally have a greater life expectancy than men, increasing globally by over 5 years, they spend more years in poor health. In 2021, women spent an average of 10.9 years in poor health compared to 8 years for men, suffering from chronic conditions such as gynecological diseases, back and neck pain, migraines, and depressive disorders. This thing we also have discussed in previous modules. And the trend of maternal mortality ratios across various economic regions and on average in the last 25 years, that is during the period of 2000 to 2025, has been shown with the help of figure 2. So here in figure 2, we see the maternal mortality ratio across different economic regions and world average. For the economic regions like sub-Saharan countries, then Oceania, then Central and Southern Asia, then Northern Africa and Western Asia, and also Latin America and the Caribbean, LAC countries, then also Eastern and South European Asia, and Europe and North America, and also Australia and New Zealand. And finally, in the right panel, we see the world average. Okay, so from figure 2, we see that MMR, maternal mortality ratio, over the last 25 years has significantly reduced by 40 percentile points from 328 in 2000 to 197 in 2025. Similarly, adolescent fertility rates also fell from 66.3 to 38.3 per 1,000 women aged 15 to 19 years. However, in the least developed countries, adolescent births increased from 4.7 million in 2000 to 5.6 million in 2024, revealing disparities in healthcare access. And young pregnancies often result in lifelong health implications, such as inadequate access to critical services like the HPV vaccine. And women experience poorer health for longer periods, just like we mentioned, from 10 to 9 years compared to 8 due to chronic conditions. And cuts to global aid threaten these health advancements, with over 60% of women-led HIV organizations losing funding in early 2025. And significantly, despite women making up 67% of the global health workforce, a 24% gender pay gap persists. This underscores the need for equitable leadership in addressing women's health needs. Now, when we want to make a comparison between male versus female health indicators or issues, we notice that biological sex and social gender norms interact to create distinct health risk profiles. Men are disproportionately affected by mortality from ischemic heart diseases, road injuries, and cirrhosis of the liver. For example, in 2019, lower male life expectancy was largely driven by higher rates of cardiovascular diseases and injuries among men aged 30 and above. Conversely, women bear a higher burden of non-fatal morbidity. Anemia is a critical female-specific indicator. The prevalence of anemia among women aged 15 to 49 is projected to rise from 31.1% in 2025 to 33% by 2030, driven by dietary deficiencies and reproductive demands. For example, in developing countries like India, nearly 57% of women of reproductive age are anemic, compared to only 35% of men in the same age group. Furthermore, gynecological diseases and maternal conditions exclusively or primarily impact female health longevity. And in the African region, maternal conditions alone reduce female health life expectancy by 0.54 years. And socially, we see that gender norms often dictate that women prioritize the health of family members over their own, leading to delayed treatment seeking for chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension. And from India, we see that this is reflected in the fact that two-thirds of the non-child birth healthcare spending is directed towards males. Now, let us also look at some other indicators affecting health and wellness of women, and let us look at lack of dietary diversity, the issue we have already just indicated. Food insecurity disproportionately impacts women, with the 2024 global gender gap in moderate or severe food insecurity rising to 1.9 percentage points, up from 1.3 in 2023. So women faced a prevalence rate of 26.1% compared to men at 24.2%. This equates to 822.3 million women versus 758.8 million men experiencing food insecurity. The correlation between food insecurity and inadequate dietary intake is clear. For example, in 2023, 53.3% of women of reproductive age facing severe food insecurity lacked sufficient nutrients, while only a third of those were food secure or mildly food insecure faced similar deficiencies. And countries like Mozambique and Uganda reported alarming figures, with only 20.8% and 12.7% of women consuming nutrient-rich food, respectively. Similarly, in Nigeria, urban and rural disparities emerged, as 84% of urban women consume protein compared to just 59% of rural women. And dietary deficiencies contribute to health issues like anemia, which is linked to severe consequences during pregnancy. And in Southern Asia, anemia cost an estimated $32.5 billion annually, perpetuating poverty. And with global health funding costs jeopardizing nutrition programs, anemia rates among women aged 15 to 49 age groups could rise to 33% by 2030, moving further from the target of a 50% reduction. Now, when you look at the issue of lack of clean cooking fuel, we see that availability of clean cooking fuel can enhance health, protect the climate, and yield a 24-fold return on investment. Energy access is vital for gender equality, but women and girls disproportionately face electricity deficits, hindering their education, economic participation, and contributing to poverty. Improved access benefits various aspects of well-being, particularly education, with notable effects on tertiary schooling. For example, studies indicate that in India, an additional hour of community electricity in rural areas is linked to reduced gender-based violence and increased contraceptive use. Similarly, in Brazil, rural women with electricity access earn 59% more income. A study in 34 sub-Saharan African countries indicated improvements in female school enrollment and life expectancy. And despite these advantages, women are underrepresented in the energy sector, holding only 32% of renewable energy jobs and 5% of utility board positions. Clean cooking could significantly improve the health and status of women and girls by reducing indoor air pollution exposure, as 3 million deaths annually are attributed to traditional cooking fuels and stoves. However, global funding meets only 30% of the need, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. To achieve universal clean cooking access by 2030, an annual investment of $8 billion is necessary, projected to produce $192.3 billion in returns and lower health cost. Now, with regard to the issue of inequitable access to digital infrastructure, we see that the rapid expansion of digital infrastructure is reshaping economies and societies, yet barriers persist that limit women and girls' engagement with emerging technologies. As we already indicated in the previous modules of this course, worldwide 70% of men and 65% of women use internet, with greater disparities found in low-income countries. Adolescent girls and young women aged 15 to 24 are particularly affected, often lacking access to digital tools and missing learning and employment opportunities. Initiatives like Uganda's Digital Uganda Vision 2040 promote digital inclusion for girls through coding workshops and mentorship. Similarly, Costa Rica's National Broadband Plan 2020-2027 prioritizes women's digital access and aims to train 6,000 individuals over 40, with at least half being women. Simulation analysis indicate that increased access to technology, improved female education, and higher female labor force participation could positively impact around 343.5 million women and girls by 2050, contributing an estimated 1.5 US trillion to the global economy by 2030, particularly benefiting the sub-Saharan African countries. Now, let us consider some of the challenges and targets the Global Development Agenda faces. The UN report titled Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2025, which we have so far utilized in this module and also in other modules. This offers a comprehensive report tracking the SDG 5 indicator, especially highlighting the progress towards gender equality through 9 targets and 18 indicators. And we would request the learners to go through this report. This is very interesting, and this can provide us a good source of study about gender. So this study employed 2 measures, a level assessment for current achievements and the trend assessment from a baseline year. The study finds that although the SDGs have driven significant progress in gender equality through reforms, leadership access, healthcare improvements, employment opportunities, and data system enhancements, recent challenges such as conflicts, climate change, and a global backlash against gender rights threaten these advances. The tracker reveals that achieving gender equality remains far off. No indicator has fully met its target, with only 1 close, 10 moderately distant, 2 far, 1 very far, and 4 lacking data. So notable improvement is observed in mobile phone ownership among women, increasing from 72.8% in 2021 to 77% in 2024, but indicators for eradicating intimate partner violence show no progress. And only 9 countries have succeeded in ending child marriage. Further, the study also indicates stagnation in 73 countries regarding legal discrimination and regression in women's representation in parliaments in 39 countries. So overall, 2025 data availability for SDG 5 indicator improved to 57.4%, but gaps remain, particularly concerning intersecting vulnerabilities, limiting efforts to support all women and girls. Further, variability in data collection and resource limitations exacerbate the gaps. But despite these issues, countries are enhancing gender data systems, with evidence suggesting transformative outcomes arise from using robust data effectively. As the world approaches the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and the 2030 SDG deadline, efforts must be made not allow setbacks to undermine progress. Urgent investments, partnerships, and collective actions are essential to safeguard achievements, address disparities, and uphold the commitment to gender equality for all women and girls. Now let us concentrate on the Indian scenario. What progress we have made so far and what challenges we face. Now, with regard to the material mortality ratio, in India we saw that it has made significant progress. It is decreased from 130 to 93 per lakh live births between 2014-16 and 2019-2021. Concurrently, the infant mortality rate has fallen from 39 to 27 per 1,000 live births, while the neonatal mortality rate has decreased from 26 to 19 per 1,000 live births in the same period. And the under 5 mortality rate, U5MR, has seen a reduction from 45 to 31 per 1,000 live births during the same period. However, total fertility rate remains steady at 2 in 2021, and the sex ratio at birth has improved from 899 to 913. This trend has been shown in figures 3 and 4. So here in figure 3 we see the maternal mortality ratio beginning from the 2014-16 to 2019 to 2021. And these figures are based on the data we have obtained from the SRS, Sample Registration Survey, India. And here in figure 4 we see the trends of different child mortality rates like under 5 mortality rate, IMR and MR, neonatal mortality rate for the same period, and these data also are obtained from the SRS registration system. So according to the sample registration system SRS report 2021, which was published on May 7, 2025. These advancements highlight improvements in maternal and child health indicators. The Special Bulletin on Maternal Mortality indicates a maternal mortality rate drop by 37 points from 2014-16 to 2019-20, 21. The SRS statistical report further showcases continued declines in child mortality indicators, as we have already noticed in the figures from 3 and 4. So, an overall state-wise analysis show, when you make a state-wise analysis within India, we will see that 8 states have achieved the Sustainable Development Goal targets of MMR, that is less than 70 by 2030, and these states are Kerala, Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, Gujarat, and Karnataka. 12 states or union territories achieved under 5 mortality target, that is less than 25 by 2030. These states include Kerala, Delhi, Tamil Nadu, and others. And 6 states or union territories have reached the NMR target, neonatal mortality rate target, which was less than equal to 12 by 2030, and these states include Kerala, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu. So significantly, India's progress is reducing maternal and child mortality indicators. This surpasses global averages. The United Nations Maternal Mortality Estimation Interagency Group, UNMMEIG, they reported a 23-point reduction in MMR from 2020 to 2023, achieving an 86% decline compared to the global reduction of 48% from 1990 to 2023. Significant reduction in child mortality are recognized in the UNIGME report, showing India achieved a 78% decline in under 5 mortality rate, 70% in neonatal mortality rate, and 71% in infant mortality rate, exceeding global reductions in these categories. However, the above analysis though provides us a progressive trend of health indicators, there still remains a few important issues to look into. So in this section, we shall try to analyze certain important issues in health and gender matters, overall development indicators, drawing upon 2 recent reports, namely the India Gender Report 2024 and the National Family Health Survey, NFHS 5th round, which was during 2019 to 2021. So these reports analyze the interplay between macroeconomic policies and lived realities, characterizing India as a macro-patriarchal state where progress in institutional reach is often undermined by deep-seated structural rigidities. India's global standing in gender parity remains concerning, with the nation ranked 127 in the 2023 Global Gender Gap Index. While the NFHS 5th round report shows a marginal improvement in the national sex ratio at birth to 929 from 919 in the 4th round report, basic health and economic metrics reveal significant gaps. And India's position in some of these indicators are shown in Table 1. So in Table 1, we see India's position in the indicators like public health expenditure, which is still 1.2% of GDP, out-of-pocket expenditure, which is 54.7% of total health spending, institutional budget 88.6%, child stunting under 5 years 35.5%, anemia women in the age group 15 to 49, which is significantly high at 57%, female labor force participation 19.2%. This is just for the year 2021, which is significantly low. And gender budget allocation is 4% to 5.5% of union budget, and spouse violence 29.3%. And regarding health and nutritional disparities, we see that health financing remains the primary obstacle to equity. Budgetary allocations for health barely reach 1.2% of GDP, resulting in out-of-pocket expenditure of 54.7%, quite high. This financial burden disproportionately affects women, who often have less control over household resources. Nutritional outcomes highlight an intergenerational crisis. Nationally, 35.5% of children under 5 are stunted, with higher prevalence among scheduled tribes 40.6% and scheduled castes 39.7%. Gender nutritional gaps are stark. 57% of women of reproductive age are anemic compared to 25% of men. So these deficiencies are often rooted in cultural norms where women eat last and least. Furthermore, while institutional births have risen to 88.6%, the maternal mortality ratio remains at 97 per 1 lakh live births, failing to meet the SDG target of 70. And progress across India is characterized by extreme regional variance. The southern model, led by Kerala, contrasts sharply with the challenges faced in the Bimaru and northeastern states. And this we can see from table 2. So here in table 2, we see that in case of MMR, northern states like Uttarakhand, it's high in 103. And in the southern region, in Kerala, it is 19. While in the east, which also represents central and the northeastern region, in Assam, it is as high as 195. And sex ratio at birth, in Haryana, it is 893. And in the Chhattisgarh, it is 958. And in the Uttar Pradesh, it is 941. And health worker density, in Delhi, it is 37 per 10,000 workers. In Kerala, it is 115 per 10,000 population. And in Assam, it is 23 per 10,000 population. And in spousal violence, Punjab is showing very high of 11.6%. In Tamil Nadu, it is 38.1%, and in Bihar, it is 35.5%. And C-section delivery rate is, in Haryana, it is 11.7%. Tamil Nadu is very high with 44.9%, and in Uttar Pradesh, it is very low with 17.7%. So when we make this regional or stratified analysis, we see that in the southern region, Kerala maintains the highest standard in health, with the lowest MMR 19 and the highest density of physicians and nurses, 115 per 10,000 population. However, the region shows a concerning trend towards the medicalization of childbirth. Tamil Nadu reports a C-section rate of 44.9%, far exceeding the WHO recommendation of 10 to 15%. Furthermore, Tamil Nadu reports the highest incidence of spousal violence at 38.1%, highlighting that economic development does not necessarily correlate with personal safety. And in the northern region, we see that northern states continue to struggle with skewed sex ratios and low female workforce participation. Haryana reports a child sex ratio of only 834, indicating persistent male preferences. And in Delhi, despite high literacy and internet access, 63.8% of women, the sex ratio at birth remains low at age 60. And women's participation in household decision making is declining in the state. And in the eastern region, which also includes the northeastern states and the central regions, Assam faces a systemic healthcare crisis with the nation's highest MMR of 195. A performance audit of district hospitals in Assam revealed that only 53% of required essential equipment was available. And human resource shortfalls reached 74% for paramedics. In Jharkhand, child stunting remains high at 39.6%, and the female literacy rate 61.7% lags behind the national average. And Chhattisgarh, while performing better on sex ratio 958, reports that 68.8% of women are anemic. And with regard to work, education, and institutional barrier, we see the female labor force participation rate has stagnated or declined, reaching 19.2% in 2021. This is for the national average. And in rural areas, the recent uptick in participation is largely a distress response, with women returning to low-value agriculture as unpaid helpers. These things we already discussed in other modules as well. Now, the platform economy, while offering new avenues, is hindered by a 40% gender gap in smartphone ownership, often relegating women to low and feminized tasks. And educationally, while elementary parity is achieved, the gender gap increases by 31% during the transition to class 9. And families often prioritize male education for secondary and higher levels due to financial constraints and the high cost of private schooling. And with regard to gender-based violence and access to justice, we see here that the female remains the most violent space for women, with cruelty by husbands or relatives being the most reported crime. Institutional barriers to justice are significant. Women constitute only 12% of the police force, and none of the states have made their 33% reservation quotas. And marginalized groups face compounded violence. More than 10 Dalit women and girls are raped daily. Yet, the pendency rate for such cases in special courts remains above 96%. Thus, in this section, we have seen that India's progress is hindered by a lack of transformative feminist finance, with gender-specific allocations reaching only 0.73%, that is under 1% of GDP. Addressing these disparities require a shift from viewing women as a welfare category to recognizing them as equal economic agents. This necessitates universal maternity benefits, increased social sector spending, and the dismantling of the macro-patriarchal framework that currently governs health and economic policy. So, to sum up, in this model we have seen the intricate landscape of gender and social development indicators highlighting a period of global progress tempered by deep-seated systemic inequalities. While a generational leap has brought much of the world to parity in primary school enrollment, women continues to bear a disproportionate burden of poor health, spending significantly more years in morbidity than men. The comparative analysis between developed and developing nations underscores a transition from survival-based indicators, for example MMR, basic literacy, to agency-based challenges such as the unpaid care work burden and a glass ceiling in leadership. And in the Indian context, we have seen that the country has made significant progress in a few important maternal and child health indicators. However, the sharp decline in female labor force participation and a widening digital divide remain critical bottlenecks. Furthermore, the extreme disparities between states, exemplified by the tenfold difference in MMR between Kerala and Assam, reveal that development outcomes are heavily influenced by local governance and social norms. Thus, we conclude here by arguing that appropriate policy measures need to be adopted so that an integrated pathway of progress, including health, education, and economic security, can be achieved to fulfill the global development targets and also to ensure gender parity and equality. So, dear learners, thank you. And with this, we come to the end of the 9th week in this course. And in the next, we shall discuss, particularly to take up an important dimensions of gender, namely gender and reproductive health. Thank you.